All right, so this Skype will be relatively short. So this unit is a bit shorter. So I'm just really going to kind of review about our kidneys and our urinary system. And so that actually won't take very long. And then I will discuss a little bit about the concept map. So the assignment for this unit is making a concept map with terms from the urinary system, so it can trip some people up a little bit, and I think a lot of it has to do with just overthinking things. So I'll kind of try to simplify it a little bit and maybe give you some tips for getting that started if you haven't already. Maybe you guys are already done. And then I don't know, I think I have 10 or so review questions that you can use to help you study for this unit. Okay, so feel free to use that chat box over there if you have any questions, or if the questions come up later, use the Q&A in our Brightspace, on our Brightspace page, or email me. All right, so homeostasis. So we've talked about this guy before in our very first unit. In fact, our first unit did the first part of chapter 21, and then this unit is kind of the last little bit of it because it sneaks in to the kidneys at the end of it, and it really should be its own kind of unit rather than being lumped together with another unit. So I only have a physical copy of the older edition textbook, but in my textbook it's 468. I'm not sure what it's considered in your online or your new edition book. I'd have to go look that up. But so homeostasis, so the body's ability to stay relatively unchanged. So it's not a constant state, so that's something to keep in mind. It doesn't stay completely constant, like our temperature isn't always 37 degrees, our blood sugar isn't always 4 millimoles per liter, but it's relatively stable. And the urinary system actually plays a huge role in that. So when it comes to water balance and solute balance in our body, our kidneys are a major player there. Also excreting waste, so that's the other piece of it there. So probably most of you, maybe I imagine most of you have probably given some kind of urine sample for a urine test in your days. So once you put urine in one of those little cups, they use one of these dip tests as a primary, or as a first check. Especially if you've had babies, you probably did one of these a lot. So urine is a great medical tool for testing for many conditions that can come up. So having too much sugar in your urine, or having any sugar in your urine, for example, is a strong indicator for having diabetes. Having too much protein could indicate something like muscle wasting. You can also test for different types of drugs in urine, and having higher than normal, or having like blood is another example. So if you've ever had a urinary tract infection, or what was the other thing I was going to go for? Oh yeah, higher than normal waste products like urea and things in your urine, or also in your bloodstream. So it can be a good tool for measuring a lot of health of body systems. And that's why it's used a lot by medical professionals. So homeostasis in the urinary system. So the first part of this talks about osmoregulation. So that's really the gain or loss of water across our cell membranes. So all living cells need a very precise kind of balance of water and solutes, things like salt. So that's whether they live on land or they're freshwater or saltwater. They all have to have some kind of process in place for regulating how much water comes and goes from their body or how much of the solute. For example, a freshwater fish, their body could technically be taking on too much water because water always wants to even things out. So if inside of the fish's body has a higher amount of solute than outside, water's going to want to try to make its way in to even that out. So a freshwater fish's body has to have a process in place for being able to get rid of that excess water. So like a freshwater fish actually has quite a lot of dilute urine that it gives off, for example. So humans, of course, we are always in danger of dehydrating. We're losing water all the time by breathing, defecation, urination, and also sweating. So we're always losing water, and that's why we always need to be replacing it. Okay, anything else I want to say about that? And again, just stop me if you have any questions. So our urinary system is made up of these two kind of bean-shaped organs that's in our abdominal cavity, a little bit to the back. And then we also have a bladder, our urinary bladder, that is kind of the storage area for urine. And then the tubes that connect the kidneys to the bladder, so the ureters. Then the urethra, which passes urine out of the bladder to the outside world. So looking a little bit, let me just grab a pen over here. All right, so going over here and looking a little bit closer at a kidney, it's showing like this outer part, this kind of meatier part of the kidney out here is where a lot of the, the filtration, and we'll talk about those steps in a minute, happens. And then as all of that works, urine is then collected in this part of the kidney, and then it passes down the ureter, which is in this diagram over here, into the bladder. So looking a little bit closer, like taking this a little section out of the kidney, we're actually going to learn more about the nephron specifically. So that is what they would call the functional unit of the kidney. So that's where the work happens. And in this diagram, this nephron looks huge. It looks like it takes up like, what, 1/10 of the kidney. But really this nephron, which is a collection of ducts and blood vessels, our kidney has like 1 million of them. So they're very, very tiny. So nephrons, that's where the blood is actually filtered. Our body has a couple of processes in place to kind of refine that filtered material out, and then it creates urine. So this list are the 4 main functions, and they're listed with an explanation in your textbook. Sometimes using some of the mastering tools that go over it step by step can be helpful, or some people might like YouTube videos. I'll try to explain it for you here. I find students sometimes have a trickier time with the difference between the reabsorption and secretion. So we'll take a peek at that. I think our next diagram is in your textbook. So as we remember in the cardiac or the cardiovascular unit, so all arteries are going away from the heart. So it's kind of a higher blood pressure. So renal artery divides up into all kinds of these tiny little capillaries that are bunched up. And you don't have to know the name of this, but it's a glomerulus and it's actually contained in this circular spot here that's called, whoops, my mouse is going crazy here. This circular part here is a Bowman's capsule. So every nephron, all million of them, have their own little collection of capillaries that the blood goes into. And through blood pressure, filtrate is actually forced out of this collection of capillaries. So filtrate is kind of like really, really dilute. It's mostly, so our blood is made up of blood cells and plasma. So it's really just kind of plasma that's forced out of those capillaries into the nephron. It's called a tubule, this little passageway here. So it has a lot of stuff we still need in it at this point. It has a lot of glucose we need, salts we need. It has a lot of water. If we were to just void out filtrate, we would dehydrate extremely quickly. We wouldn't survive long. So it uses this whole tubule here to kind of refine itself and turn into urine. By the time it's over here in this collecting duct, it is then urine. But in the meantime, through this tubule, it goes through reabsorption and secretion. So reabsorption is the green arrows, so it's kind of our body is reclaiming things we want out of there. So we will reclaim, like I said, water, some salts, glucose, things that our body still needs and doesn't want filtered out into our urine. And then this other process of secretion happens where there are some things that actually move from this blood vessel back into the filtrate. So a good example there is some drugs. As our body is removing medication or drugs from our system, it will secrete from the blood vessel into the filtrate. So those two processes happen, the reabsorption and secretion, and it refines down into urine. And then the fourth step, which is down here, is excretion. So that's actually voiding or peeing. So it's urine making its way to the outside world is excretion. I made a point down here that urea, which is one of the main compounds found in urine, it's actually a waste product from the breakdown or metabolism of protein. So as our body breaks things down that we ingest, or if it's breaking down like old cells or old tissue within our body, urea is given off as a waste product in urine. And that's one way that medical professionals can test kidney function is through a blood test. If your blood is starting to show higher levels of things like urea, that could mean your kidneys aren't doing their job so well anymore for whatever reason. So if you guys, so knowing those 4 steps are going to be important for your test. So knowing the way substances are flowing. So if you wanted to, I know there, oh, who joined us here? I was going to say, I know there's Mary joined us. There's only a few of you, but if you want to go ahead and answer in the text box if you have ideas. So what would A be? So forcing water and other small molecules from the blood to form filtrate. That would be filtration, that's right. So the next one is blank of water and valuable solutes back into the blood. So that would be from the filtrate back into the blood would be reabsorption, that's right. And C, so blank of certain substances such as ions and drugs into the filtrate. Secretion, that's right. And then the last one, blank of urine from the kidneys, excretion to the outside. That's right. Good. So how to make a concept map. So let me see here. how about let's first do some review questions. So let me give you some review questions first, and then we'll talk about the concept map. Are you guys having trouble with it, or maybe or have you started it yet? Or any thoughts on the concept map? Got a draft done, that's good. I think drafts are important for this this assignment. I actually haven't started. Instructions make sense, that's good. You're done with mine, very good. Ah, okay, yeah. Okay, so I'll talk about concept map after we do some of these questions. So you can click right on the screen. So actually, I didn't talk about antidiuretic hormone, so this is a good reminder for myself. So, so antidiuretic hormone. So one way to remember what this does is, so a diuretic, so it's pretty common that we are aware of caffeine and things like alcohol being a diuretic, so meaning that it makes you pee more. So antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, is a hormone produced by our bodies. So when our body detects that we are getting a bit dehydrated, antidiuretic hormone is produced, and it tells our kidneys to reabsorb more water. So I'm kind of giving away the answer here, but that's okay. But I just wanted to give that tip that if you have trouble remembering what antidiuretic hormone does, remember that diuretic, like coffee, makes you pee more. So antidiuretic is going to make you pee less, which means that your kidneys are keeping more water in your body. So that brings me to this question. So you forgot to bring your water bottle to the gym and it's been a sweaty workout. Your body feels dehydrated. What happens within your body to maintain homeostasis? So the first one is your body produces more antidiuretic hormone, increasing the amount of water reabsorbed by the nephron. This is one of those questions, if I saw it on a test, I would cover up all the answers and try to determine in my head each one whether it's true or false. Sometimes that is helpful. Answer B says your body produces more antidiuretic hormone, decreasing the amount of water reabsorbed by the nephron. Or C, your body produces less antidiuretic hormone, causing you to void less. So if you want to pick an answer, yeah, you can actually click right on the screen too there. So I think you guys all answered. I'll show results there. So you guys are right. So if you're dehydrated, your body produces more antidiuretic hormone, which increases the amount of water reabsorbed by the nephron. So more water is passed from the filtrate back into the bloodstream to help maintain that homeostasis. So it's keeping more water. Good. All right, let's go number 2. So kidneys have many processes that help the body, that help the body maintain homeostasis. You can be confident that most processes will occur via, so this kind of throws back to what we learned about positive and negative feedback earlier in the course, but it applies to kidneys as well. So you guys said negative feedback. That's correct. All right, question 3. Urea is a waste product excreted via the urinary system. It is produced from the metabolism of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, or popsicles. And you guys are correct, proteins. I guess I had popsicles on my mind today. I felt like a popsicle. I was cold. I'm ready for spring. Okay, kidney question 4. Humans, I said human, can lose water from their bodies via sweating, defecation, breathing, urination, or all of the above. And you guys are correct, all of the above. I think I have 10 questions here, so we'll go on number 5. Which of the following is not a function of the kidney? Reabsorption of water, reabsorption of solutes. So solutes are things dissolved in plasma or water. Elimination of several waste products, or production of bile before being stored in the gallbladder. You guys are all correct. That is not a function of the kidney. What does produce bile, do you remember? Oh wait, yeah, you're right, the liver. For a second I was second guessing myself. I'm like, wait, did we do the digestive system? I'm doing biology with my son as well, and so I sometimes get my classes mixed up in my head. All right, next question. Question 6, what is the functional? That should say functional. I was having a rough day today with spelling apparently. Unit of the kidney, meaning what structure within the kidney does most of the work of elimination? The proton, nephron, SA node, or the alveoli? And you are all correct. It is the nephron. Question 7. So here's the kind of tricky ones that can be a little bit tricky sometimes if you don't fully understand how the nephron works. So reabsorption is the movement of substances from the blank to the blank. Is it filtrate to blood, blood to filtrate, glomerulus to tubule, or kidney to bladder? And you guys are so smart. It is from the filtrate to the blood. And you are correct. So secretion is the movement of substances from the blank to the blank. So secretion, movement of substances from the blank to the blank. And you guys are correct. It is from the blood to the nephron. So secretion is the one that where a lot of ions or drugs will move from the nearby blood vessel into the tubule, not from the initial filtration. That's the one that stumps people sometimes. All right, next question. Question 9. Filtration is the movement of substances from the blank to the blank. And you guys are correct. It's blood vessels to the tubules. So it's that initial collection of tiny little capillaries called the glomerulus that filtration happens to make the filtrate. All right, and I think last question. Excretion is the movements of substance from the blank to the blank. Yes, you guys are good. It's in this example, it says from kidneys to the outside world. So outside world is your big clue there. It's when you are, yeah, so one person did say kidney to urinary bladder. And I find in our textbook on the nephron diagram there, it has excretion at the bottom, so it does look like it means like leaving the nephron to go to the bladder, but excretion technically means the urine is making its way to the outside. So something to keep in mind for your test, hint, hint. All right, so making a concept map. So there's not one right way to do this concept map, so don't get too, bogged down by it. I find I can give high marks to, quite a few people, even though their concept maps may look a little different. So as long as you have the right ideas and the right things connected, then that's good. So one tip I have for starting something like a concept map is, so if you're good on like a computer, you can do something like I did here where you just type all the answers, you're able to move them around. If you prefer more hands-on, you could write them out and cut them out of paper and put them out on your table. So it makes it easier to move things around and, make adjustments. And then even if you get all of your words out on your table and connected, and you're like, yes, that's how I want it to be, just take a picture of it and send it to me. You don't have to then go and put it into a program on the computer or whatever. So I'm open to how you want to submit this. I think in your instructions it says put it in a Word document, if I remember correctly, but you don't have to do that. You can send me a picture as long as I can clearly see what you've labeled. Okay? So if I were doing the urinary system, I would take all of my terms. I think this is all the terms that are included in the assignment. And I'm going to try to think, okay, I'm going to try to group things together that I know should go together. So urinary system seems like a pretty overarching term. So that could be the main bubble in your concept map, because you want it to have a starting point, and urinary system is kind of the most broad and overarching kind of umbrella term that you've been given here, right? So you could go a variety of ways with this. One example could be, okay, I'm going to, make the first connections to the major pieces of anatomy. So maybe you want to put the kidneys here and then connect it to your urinary system. So maybe you want to do that. And then, then go crazy with arrows just a second here. And then you want to say, So urinary bladder is another major anatomy term, or major piece of anatomy. And then you have your ureter. Or see, look, you could even put your ureter here and your bladder. Connect the two because they're both parts of the urinary system, but then maybe you want to add another arrow from, whoops, sorry, there's a dog barking in the background, from ureter to bladder, and then maybe right along this arrow right here you can say, you know, kidney or ureter is connected, goes from the kidney to the urinary bladder, and then you could just put another text box there that says that above the arrow. And then, oops, my goodness, I'm not being very good at this at the moment. And then urethra would be another. And so then you know like excretion is going to happen through the urethra, so maybe you're going to group those together with arrows in some way. You know, the kidney is where a lot of is where the filtration is happening, so you're going to probably want to somehow group kidney to nephron. Like I said, there's lots of different ways you can do this. And then you know, like in the nephron, oh my goodness, the nephron, that's where your, where's my filtration? Oh, maybe we know secretion and reabsorption happens in the nephron. So do you see what I'm doing here? And then I can make it look prettier and add more information along the arrows. Does that make sense? That's why if I were doing a concept map, I would like to write it all out and be able to slide it around my table and group things together. And then add in extra details as I went. This does not look very pretty, by the way. If your concept map looked like this, I would not understand it. So see here now, like if I were going to adjust this, I'd want it to be known that these tubules, because I forgot about this term, that's where the secretion and reabsorption actually happens, right? Blood vessels, I don't know where I'd end up putting it, but you get the, I would eventually find somewhere where I wanted to put it. Does that help at all? All right, so that is pretty much what I was going to include in this Skype session. So if you find you're doing your concept map or any assignment really and you're getting partway through, feel free to just send it to me and say, am I on the right track here? And I can, as long as it's before the due date, I can give you some feedback and you can adjust things. Like I'm always open to that kind of stuff. I feel like it will improve learning. Any questions? That's pretty much all I had, unless you guys had anything to bring to the table. Going into your test next week, make sure you review the other Skype review questions along with your other study habits. Clear as mud. That's not very clear, Heather. I'm sure it will be fine. I find people overthink this concept map a little too much. Same as the immune system's analogy of military. And full disclosure, I would hate doing that assignment as a student. I'm not very good at analogies, but I'm always amazed reading ones that you guys come up with. So question, are there situations where the filtrate is just flushed from the body without reabsorption? If that were to happen, you would be in trouble. So I'm sure you can get into some illnesses with your kidneys or whatnot where those things are not going to happen properly, like a bad infection, for example, where things like reabsorption and secretion are going to be messed up a bit. So in those instances, it could be that urine is not being concentrated properly, but you will dehydrate very quickly. But there are situations where kidneys are not doing what they're supposed to based on illness, right? So those things could be, I wouldn't say the filtrate is just flushed completely without any reabsorption, but if you're ill enough, it could be. I see somebody is typing there. And I'm hoping to have, like temporary. Well, more like, so you're talking about people that sometimes, if under stress or anxiety need to pee more often? Is that kind of what you're thinking? Yeah, that is probably more to do with muscles in your bladder than it is with your kidneys' creation of urine. You're welcome. All right, go tend to your baby. Thank you for coming. I'll give you guys your points for participation. I'm just going to stop the recording.